Hey everyone, it's Laura from the library, and I'm back with a new series. This time around, we're going to be doing a National Novel Writing Month virtual challenge. You may have joined us earlier in the spring where we put out a video about using the Young Writers Program to do a writing challenge for yourself, a month-long writing challenge. This time around, we're going to be doing something that is a little more guided and yet also allows you to do it at your own pace. Okay. I'm going to take my video right here off the screen so you can focus on all the good stuff that I've got in these slides that I'll be doing for you. But I wanted to introduce myself just so you know who will be leading you through this program and giving you tips, writer's block remedies, and prompts to work on. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're thinking about taking part in the National Novel Writing Month or NaNoWriMo Challenge this November, or even if you're watching this video at a completely different time and you just have a story to tell or you want to get some tips on writing, maybe you haven't done it much before, that's totally fine too. I'm going to give you a few exercises today to get started. I'm going to give you some ideas about a scene list and plotting. And I will include some resources in here that will help you with some handouts, different prompts, things like that. I am going to use the high school workbook for the National Novel Writing Month program. So I will link to that in the description of the video, and you can work along with that. It's got great things to fill out, great information for you to use. If you're an adult, you can still get some tips from it, but you can also use the NaNoWriMo's adult program as well. So to get us started, it is optional for you to take part in the NaNoWriMo Young Writers Program. You can do all of what I'm suggesting and all the tips and things. You can do all of that at home on a notebook, just on your computer word processor. You don't have to be involved in anything bigger, but if you want to, you can use this program. Here is the web address, and I've actually got the page pulled up here. This site is built for writers who are in middle school and high school. And it will give you a place to keep track of your word count. It'll give you what they have, a dare machine, so it'll give you different prompts and different suggestions to kind of do twists in your writing. It's a great resource. And it's also got those workbooks that I talked about, both for middle school and high school. If you are 18 already, or you are older than 18 and you are still interested in doing along with this writing program, you can use the adult site, which is just nanowrimo.org. I suggest this because it's just got a lot of great tools, and I really think it's a good program if you're trying to get started. It does focus primarily for the month of November. Your goal is to hit 50,000 words. And you may say, that's a lot for me, and that's totally fine. You can set your own goal if you want to change it. But the NaNoWriMo website is set up. It has a challenge already built in that will have the 50,000 words for you. If you're not interested in writing a fiction piece at all, maybe you're interested in doing a verse collection, or you're working on a personal narrative or biography, memoir, any kind of nonfiction, you can do that too. You can really customize it, let's say, so that it works for the program that you want to do and the project that you have in mind. That being said, most of the tips and tricks that I'm going to give you are based on fiction. So if you're writing, high school romance, or if you're trying to write some kind of far out fantasy, this will really help you with getting started, and then over the course of the weeks, world building, characters, things like that. So the first exercise I'm going to give you to get started on, a couple years back when I worked with a group that did creative writing as an after-school program, they used this process called quick draw drafting, and I've always loved it. I think it's really fun, and I've done it with pretty much every writing group I've ever worked with. I'm going to give you some prompts, and basically your goal is to write for 5 to 10 minutes, long enough to get some ideas out, not so long that you've committed to that particular idea, but then you stop yourself once that time's up and you move on to another one. And that way you start getting ideas flowing. You might come up with a few different ideas that you want to work together. You may hit on one that just really works for you, but hopefully you have fun and get past that part of your brain that says, I can't do it. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not a writer, because anyone can write. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've got about 6 prompts in the slides. And then after that, I do link to a prompt list if you want to continue working on it or you don't like the ones that I've given you. I'm going to go ahead and read the slides, pause a little bit so that you have time to pause the video if you want to work on that particular prompt. You can set your own timer on a phone or on your watch or on a microwave if you don't have a phone nearby. And then when you're ready, move on to the next one. If you could solve one world or local problem, what would it be and why? What steps would you suggest to start fixing that problem? Prompt number 2, you're standing in the living room with a gun in your hand. Someone is lying dead on the floor. What happened? You are a robot. What are your reasons for desperately wishing you were human? And what would you like to do that you are incapable of or forbidden to do by other humans? I wish I could tell the truth about blank, but I don't know how. Create the beginning of a story with one of the following groups of elements. You could use a campfire, a scream, and a small lie that gets bigger and bigger. Or maybe you prefer a stolen ring, spiders, and a sinister stranger. On the other hand, maybe you're going for a little romance gone wrong with an ex-boyfriend, a pair of binoculars, and a good luck charm. And for the last prompt I've got for you guys, a woman walks into the ocean in a red ball gown. Tell the rest of the story. All right, so hopefully at least one of those prompts spoke to you. You got some good ideas. You may have noticed there's a lot of different ways you can take most of those, particularly if you think about the last one. You could tell what happens before she walks into the ocean, or maybe you decide to tell what happens after. And the real point of this exercise is to give you some ideas, something you might want to start your story on, but also to show you that one idea can springboard you into something completely different. You may have written on a prompt and not used the original prompt at all, but you like something that came out of it, a little spin-off, and you go with that. Okay. Some other questions to think about in this process are there any issues or a fear that you have that you want a character to tackle? So that might be drawing from your real life experiences to create a really meaningful story. Is a real life problem that you can explore, maybe in a fantasy world or in, a very contemporary, current, real world. If you toss certain elements together, what will come out of it? So if you put 2 really weird things together for your story, what happens? Exploring that could give you a really great story. The essence is what if, what if, what if. Okay. If you look down here, I've got a link to a list of prompts in addition to the ones that I gave you. And you can type that from here, but I'll also put it into the description of the video. So you can find that link if you want. And if you're looking for a book that you can hold in your hand that will give you some tips on writing, 2 of the ones you can look for in the Bellwood catalog or get through Interlibrary Loan are Brave the Page, which is actually put together for the NaNoWriMo program, and Spilling Ink, a young writer's handbook, which is really great for middle school writers and getting you started and giving you ideas. The next thing I want to give you some tips with is creating a scene list. And so we'll go into that. I'm also going to link to this workbook, which is created by the Young Writers Program, and it gives you tons of resources for working your way through the entire writing process. Okay, so for plot help, creating those scenes, figuring out where your story is going to go, you're going to look at pages 19 through 29 in the PDF. Page 26 will give you a list of different scenes to include, which I'm going to go through a different breakdown of that, but as you'll see, there's totally a ton of different ways that you can craft your story. In school, you typically see, like kind of the roller coaster or the mountain, and that's one way to go about it. And that's the way that they give you worksheets for, but there are tons of different ways. And so they also link to other plot structures and tools on page 29. All right, so I've actually put this particular information together based on a blog post on helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. So if you want to, you can head over there and get some more tips. But these are some categories of scenes that you're going to want to think about when you're putting together a story. You don't have to have it all figured out right away. You might like to see the story develop just as you go along. You may like to have everything planned out ahead of time. That's totally fine. It is a good idea to kind of list what are called beats, or a few key scenes that you know you want to have, even if you're going to allow things to happen organically as you write. Okay, so you want to think about your setup, all the stuff that was happening before the adventure started, and what might have led to it happening. Your inciting incident is what kind of sets your protagonist on their journey. It makes it so they can't continue in their life as it was before. They have to do something. You're going to think about pinch points, which is a lot of different scenes. And typically they're places where your character gets into trouble. Something happens that they weren't expecting or they don't want, but they do manage to make it out. And you want to consider a series of these pinch points. They get more difficult, more is at stake, more is lost when things go wrong as the story goes on. Okay. You're also going to want to have a major setback. So in this case, it's a very high stakes pinch point where a plan is derailed, almost all hope is lost, and you don't know if they're going to make it back from the end of there. Okay, and that's what kind of leads to your climax. So that's what the story has been building towards. It's the big confrontation, or the important event that everything hinges on. Okay, but after that big event, that's not usually just the end of the story. It doesn't stop there. So you want to think about your wrap up. What consequences were created by that big confrontation, that climax event? How are you going to wrap up your loose ends? If something devastating happens, how do people move on from there? If it's really good, are there any bittersweet moments, even if you think you got what you wanted? Sometimes it's not always a great thing that we got what we wanted. So you want to think about how that works out for the character and setting up those pieces. And if you're trying to write a series, that's the point where you start seeding some of those events that might happen later on. All right, so we've done some writing prompts. We've got an idea of an exercise you can try to start creating some of your plot points before you get started with your writing challenge, which starts November 1st. But before you do that, you want to settle on a general idea, even if you don't have everything mapped out. You want to set a writing goal, which can be so many pages. The word count, you could stick to the 50,000 word goal if that's your choice. And you want to write a little bit every day to try and meet that. Okay. And in later weeks, we'll be talking about characters, conflict, different things like that. So you may want to brainstorm some different character ideas, scenarios your characters could come across, or conflicts that you might want to use. In the next couple of weeks, I'll be doing a video every Wednesday to kind of cheer you on as you're doing your writing challenge, but I'll also give you some quick tips about writing, some considerations, some writing prompts to get you going that'll be built around our theme for the week, and also some remedies for writer's block or different tricks to try if you're getting stuck in the middle of your story. Okay. As you can see down here, next week we'll be talking about creating a cast of dynamic and relatable characters that feel real. All right. I'm excited to be doing this challenge along with you and helping you make your way through it. So hopefully I'll see you next week for this next video, or again, if you're watching at a time later than November, you can move right along to part 2. Okay. Good luck with your challenge.